My name is Patricia Sannit, and I'm an artist who lives in Phoenix. And I have been asked to do a project for the Scottsdale Public Library to lead you all in some art making. And I'm doing that because I have a piece called Recombinant in the Scottsdale Public Library's Public Gallery show honoring Beth Ames Swartz and 20 years of Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club is an organization that Beth started, and it is for artists here in the Valley. We get together monthly and are able to talk about our work and communicate with each other, get out of our studios a little bit, which can be really isolating. And Beth regularly has arranged for really interesting people, gallerists and curators and arts professionals to come and speak to us. And there's no one like Beth. Beth is responsible for our arts community flourishing as much as it has. She is a remarkable mentor, a constant source of support and encouragement for every artist. The group has many, many members. It started small, but it's grown and grown. I've been involved about 10 years or so, and it really changed my career. It made me part of a community that I didn't even know existed. So we are grateful to Beth, and we are grateful for this show honoring her at the library. It opened October 5th. It closes December 31st. I hope you have a chance to check it out. It is a wonderful show. I want to talk to you a little bit about my work. My work is influenced by history primarily, and the study of archaeology and the commonalities between people. The piece I have in the show is called Recombinant. That refers to DNA, of course, but also to the common building blocks that we all have. As an artist, I prefer to embrace what we have together as opposed to show what divides us. These pieces are part of the same series that Recombinant came from. They're a little less colorful. They're more about the natural clay, but they have some of the markings that are really typical of my work. I like to use a lot of geometric patterns that you find in traditional architecture and textiles. And then I do like to work with things that look a little bit like the figure. I'm also really interested in how clay looks and how lots of materials look. I like working with metal and with weird drippy waxes and resins and things that show a moment in time. I'm sort of interested in process. The project I'm going to lead you through, I'm calling Showing the Way. So a cairn is a tower that people make on a pathway to show the way. And I think given what so many of us are going through right now, a lot of us would like the opportunity to see a future where things are a little less stressful. So I wanted to work on a project now with you that shows a path to a future that might be a little more optimistic. So I'm going to start by doing a number of rocks. I'm going to make rocks out of clay, and I'm going to show you two different ways to make rocks. One would just be a solid rock, and the second option would be a rock with, like out of a pinch pot. And I also want to add a little twist for those of you who are interested. Some of the rocks I think it'd be interesting to make them look like someone's face. Mentors are important people to guide us through life. And I would like to make some rocks that represented some of the mentors that have helped shape me, like Beth Ames Swartz, I mentioned, was one of my mentors. I don't know if I can do justice to the beautiful Beth, but I will try to make some faces of people who represent individuals who have led me. And I am also going to consider making some rocks and paint symbols on them or patterns, because pattern and symbol have been an important part of my work for a number of years now. So I'm thinking about building a cairn that's going to combine maybe some natural rock, some rocks that are painted with symbols, and then some that represent people who are important to me in my life. A lot of my work is sort of process-based, which means I don't make decisions about it beforehand. I have an idea or a concept that I see, that I imagine, that I think about a lot. I worry about a lot, and I consider the difficulties, the ramifications, the significance, the meaning. And even so, when I get to working, I often find that my work changes as the project develops. I like to respond to the moment. I like to respond to the material. Sometimes when something is happening, I see something occurring and I want to embrace that moment. I want to embrace that part of the work and not just throw it away, because those little moments sometimes are very special. And I like work that has sort of a fresh, responsive feeling to the world. Let's take a moment to look at cairns. I bet a lot of you have seen cairns if you ever go out hiking. This beautiful cairn is in Zion National Park. This is around Sedona. A really interesting idea or expression of a cairn is something called an Inukshuk in Nunavut, which is in the Northwest Territories of Canada. These sort of figurative cairns are made out of huge boulders, and they are on the tundra, and they help people find their way in the middle of a really blank nothingness, which it can be in the wintertime, as you can imagine up there. This one really does look like a figure. So there's a tradition. So those are called Inukshuk. And outside of Las Vegas, you might have seen these examples of cairns. This is by the Swiss artist Ugo Ondine, and it's called 7 Magic Mountains. I like to use pattern in my work. Traditionally, I have used traditional textile patterns and geometric patterns found across the world because I like to point out the commonalities between peoples and cultures. So in this project, since we're thinking about hope or about mentors or about a way to guide us to the future, I started looking for some patterns that might make some sense. So before you start, you might want to look around your home or in your mind for some patterns that might be stimulating to you. Let's begin, huh? I'm going to start with the most basic rock forming technique, and it's going to be fun. Although they might look sort of like potatoes. We'll see. I guess, honestly, you could just stack potatoes if you wanted to. I have some really interesting, really beautiful mixed clay here. You might be using air-dried clay or regular clay. So I'm just going to take a hunk of clay and I'm going to pat it so it looks like a rock. I'm going to use this paddle. A wooden spoon is a really handy paddle too. Especially you can use that curved side to kind of make your rock curvier. Helps to make the clay a little more compressed, shape it a little bit, and it's just kind of fun. Pat, 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 pat. All right, I have a rock. I'm going to start with a ball of clay, and first I'm going to pat it into a circle. Looks like that solid rock again. But this time I'm going to open it up. It takes a little less clay to make a little bigger rock. So I have my thumb in here at this point, and I'm just going to start pinching around to thin out the walls. I'm going to keep it in my hand as I'm pinching because I want to keep it round. If I put it down on the table, I'll have a flat spot on my rock. At this point, I don't want a flat spot on my rock. So the first thing I'm going to do, see I've got a hole in there? I'm going to get a few more fingers in there and I'm going to start stretching it out. All right, so I have my really basic pinch pot. This is not as pretty as a pinch pot I might make if I were going to eat or drink out of it, but for making rocks, I think I can take it pretty easy here. Now, I'm going to put this upside down for a moment, just let it rest. Then I'm going to take another piece of clay and I'm just going to flatten this one out a little bit. Maybe I'll use my paddle. There we go, so we stretch it out. Stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to see, yes, because I want to cover that hole, okay? So I don't know if you've ever worked with clay before, but a very important lesson with clay is slipping and scoring. Slipping and scoring is how we make sure things that we make out of clay stay together. Because clay shrinks, and if you don't attach two pieces well together, they will shrink apart from each other and fall apart. So to slip and score, I'm just going to get this edge a little bit wet. I have a paintbrush and a jar of water here. I could use a spray bottle if I wanted to. I'm just going to use a plastic fork and scratch the edge here. I'm going to do the same thing to my lid here, I'll call it. Scratch the edge, paint the edge, flip this upside down, and I'm going to put this cap on here. Now, I want to seal it all the way around because once I've sealed air in here, I have sort of like a balloon. And that means that I can paddle this a little bit because the air pressure inside will help to keep the shape. Now, I wouldn't want to fire the clay, and firing the clay means that's the process. And we take dry clay, we put it in something called a kiln, and we fire it to a very high temperature, at least 1800 degrees. That makes it permanently hard, but during that process it shrinks. And if you have air trapped inside, the air obviously heats up very rapidly and would cause your piece to explode a little bit. So if I were going to fire this, I would put a little tiny pinhole in it to let the air out. I know it does look like a potato, it really does. I've never made potato sculpture, have you? So it's rock-like, right? When you say it's rock-like, it's not strong enough yet to really support much, but I'm just going to let it set up and dry a little bit, okay? Now, the other two processes I want to talk about, what if we want to turn these into heads? Because that really would add a little extra personality and also personal expression to our work. And as an artist, I really prize work that demonstrates individuality and that the artist is really, the artist's hand, the artist's soul, the artist's heart is part of it. And so I think in this piece, for me anyway, it makes more sense, and it's important to me to make my rocks represent really what I care about the most, the people I think that have been my best leaders or caretakers, or the people I look to for inspiration. Maybe it would be writers or musicians or poets or authors, political leaders, someone that you think could help us, all of us, find a path forward. So that's a big challenge, I know. But I'm going to try to make a sort of face. And I think actually what I'm going to work on is making we'll see. My plan right now is to make a face, a head, that maybe represents an older person, maybe someone that looks a little bit like my father. So I'm making this pinch pot form just like I did the first time. But before I seal it up, I'm going to think about how I'm going to manipulate the face, what's going to be the face a little bit. So we have sort of a mask-like thing right now. I'm going to start thinking about how faces are formed, where our chins are, where our foreheads are, all that kind of stuff. Right? So I'm going to, from the inside here, I'm going to build a chin just by pushing the clay out from the inside. And then I'm going to do the same thing right around where the nose is. You know, our noses are like, right, our eyes are right in the middle of our heads from the top to the bottom, and our noses are below that. So I'm going to start pushing a nose out. Right? And then I think I'll take a tool that I have here. Maybe I'll just start actually with the back of a pencil, an eraser, and I'm just going to put a couple of sort of eye sockets in where our eyes are. And remember I told you that our eyes are about halfway from the top. If I were to do this, our eyes are right smack dab in the middle of our heads. So that's where I place these eyes. There we go. Now I've got a nice little nose. Now, I was thinking my father, but maybe what I want to do is someone's face who's really smiling, because I want them to be cheering me on. Maybe I'll make someone who's like saying, "Yay, go, you can do it." I know a lot of us could use a cheerleader right now, so at least that's how I feel many days. All right, so I'm going to make sort of a mouthish thing. Let's see here, find a little soft clay, maybe. The nice thing about clay like this too is that if you don't like it, you just start all over again. No pressure. No pressure whatsoever. Oh, my person's looking sad now rather than happy, so maybe I'll try a different tool that I can get in here and make it a nice smile. Like they're cheering me on. Cheering me on. All right, so now if I want to make see here. I'm gonna make a little more of a face. Maybe I'll toss on some eyebrows. My dad has big eyebrows. And my dad has very little hair on the back of his head, so that will be easy for me. Some kids like to make hair using a garlic press because you can push the clay through a garlic press and make really excellent curly hair. All right, so I've got my sort of face thing. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna add a back to this. Okay, now that I've sort of developed the face, I'll put in some eyeballs and maybe eyelids too. It's pretty basic right now, but that's okay. It is a rock after all. And I'm gonna score this, pop this here. Okay, I'm gonna make the other part the back of the head. Just kind of smushed it a little bit, flattened it out. I'm gonna pop that on back here. See if I can make it fit pretty well. Okay, and I wanna be able to paddle it. Oh, I gave him kind of a really big back of his head. Actually, the backs of our heads are pretty big, but I think I made my poor dad's head kind of too big in the back. I might have to fix that. So I worked on stacking the cairns, like we talked about, and then I painted up some of them. So let me show you what I came up with. First, I did sort of a basic one, just with rocks that I found. If I were going to paint this, it's a really good idea to first figure out a way to stack them, because after you paint them, you want to make sure that the parts go together and look good. I did a second cairn, which is a mixture of a rock I made, some found pieces of granite in my front yard, and then some rocks I found when I was hiking. So this guy, this is the one that has the sculpted head, and then a carved piece of clay, and then some hollow sections. And then finally, here is my painted version. So I did a really kind of cartoony sort of portrayal of someone, and then I painted on some symbols that hopefully will lead us to a more positive future. I used a mixture of spray paints, Sharpies, and acrylic paints to get this whole thing done. So it's pretty open-ended. You can try whatever you want. You can use whatever you want. Potatoes even, right? So remember to go see the Breakfast Club show at the Scottsdale Public Library Civic Center branch, open October 5th through December 31st. I have a piece as well at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art called We the People. It's an interactive piece, so you're welcome to step up on it. It's in the courtyard right inside the museum. It'll be there through the end of this month. And if you want to check out my work, it's www.patriciasannit.com. Thanks so much. I hope you all enjoy this. Bye.